Sometimes it's not only about like the words, right? It's about what the person is doing or saying or gesturing to really get the full communication. Because sometimes in conversations, only 7% are words, right? The rest of it is that body language and what goes to it to understand.
So Laurie, just talk from your experience about how did you get to a point where you had a stronger awareness towards nonverbal cues and body language?
In 2021, I lost my hearing due to Meniere's disease. So I had to lean on technology and phone and look at somebody's like mouth or their gestures or their energy.
When you were in situations that you were still trying to do business but having to relearn how to communicate, were you nervous?
I was frustrated. I was nervous that the other person would think I was less than, and that was a big thing. And I think that's why I wanted to have a hearing person around me so that they wouldn't think less of me. Because even though I had all my knowledge, it's still all here. But losing hearing, right, is a big thing. And now that other person might look at me and think, well, she can't handle this job. And that was my biggest fear.
How can people do a better job of showing somebody that they are truly listening to them?
What you're doing now, right? You're looking at me, you're not turning your face, you're not looking at something else. You're really, truly listening. The difference between hearing and listening.
But regardless of what those circumstances are, if you want to be a better communicator, be a better listener.
Yes.
And what you've shared is that some of the ways that we can listen better is
just listen with intent.
From the boardroom to the dining table, what you say matters, but more than what you say, sometimes it's those nonverbal cues. It's the body language. It's what comes across in what somebody is saying with their whole of their self. So today's discussion, we're going to look to decipher the clues of how we can be able to show up in our conversations more effectively and not just focus on the words that we say, but how we say it and how we interact with others. And I'm delighted to have Laurie here on the show to share some of her experience.
Thank you so much, Phil. I'm so happy to be here.
So Laurie, just talk from your experience about how did you get to a point where you had a stronger awareness towards nonverbal cues and body language and the role that that played in communication?
Sure. Well, in 2021, I lost my hearing due to Meniere's disease. So as I was losing my hearing and I had hearing aids, it was really difficult to communicate with people. So I had to lean on technology and phone and look at somebody's like mouth or their gestures or their energy. It depended on what we were talking about to get like the full cue, because sometimes it's not only about like the words, right? It's about what the person is doing or saying or gesturing to really get the full communication. Because sometimes in conversations, only 7% are words, right? The rest of it is that body language and what goes to it to understand.
So what are some of the common mistakes that you were bumping into that made it difficult for you to communicate with others, difficult for you to join a conversation when you were going through your experience of having to relearn to hear again?
So the big thing is people would understand, but then they wouldn't. So they'd pick a restaurant that was really noisy. Let's say if we went out to dinner, if it was in a meeting where people wouldn't be looking at me because I needed you to look at me in order to be able to really understand, or they would turn their face and then I couldn't understand. So I have to say that again. My technology was key to everything, which was like my phone was closed captions, so I'd be able to put it in front of me and kind of look up and down and have people be patient with that. And I think that was part of it too, is having that patience to speak clearly so that I could understand everything.
Okay. And just share with us and everybody that's listening your journey into hearing loss, because this wasn't something you were born with, right?
No. So I was born deaf in my left ear, so I only had one, which I was fine growing up, and we were okay. But then in 2020, I woke up with severe vertigo. The room was spinning. I could only go from the bedroom to the bathroom for 3 weeks. I had to learn how to walk straight again. I was walking with a cane. And I immediately lost 35% of my hearing. So I had to get hearing aids. So I had to go in that world and figure out how the hearing aid worked. And then slowly, every couple of months, I would lose more and more hearing. So in 2021, I went completely deaf. I was deaf for a year until I received an operation, which was a cochlear implant. And now with the help of that, I can hear, which is great. But it was a hard journey that year being deaf. I had to learn how to communicate. I was still selling. I was still rock and rolling. I was still driving. So you kind of learn to rely on your other senses, like looking around more, making sure that you were facing people, using technology, which was the hard part. But finding people to help me was the most difficult part of it, because a lot of people wanted to either stay deaf, or with Meniere's disease, there was a lot of other things, like I was dizzy. I had to be careful if there was too much sensory in a room. But to me, I wanted to work. I wanted to make money. So finding key people to help me, my family came together. We found like the Google Pixel. There was also a watch that was almost like Morse code. If the dog would bark or if the water was running, it would like vibrate. I wake up with a Fitbit watch. So those kinds of things that I had to do in order to figure out how to communicate until I got the operation.
How's it truly changed the way that you communicate for the long term?
Oh, I think I'm so much more sensitive to other people with any kind of disability because I realized that people are not patient, right? And they won't help sometimes. Or what I had to go through, I just want to help so many other people now that have hearing loss or have a cochlear implant or are deaf to be able to still go out in the world and enjoy themselves, because I know it was really difficult for me. So it's changed how I look, and I'm much more patient with anyone, any kind of disability, to be able to help and be able to also reach out to people who cannot hear, which is what I really want to go into.
How's it gone on to be able to provide a differentiator to the way that you operate in your business?
So, everything is closed captioned. Like my computer is closed captioned, my phone is still closed captioned. So I have to rely on that to make sure that I'm hearing every single word. If I'm in a meeting, I want to make sure that I'm in a vantage point where I can hear everyone in the room. That's really important to me. Anytime I meet a client, I tell them what happened so that if they're in front of me, to make sure that they turn around. So there's a lot of little things that we're able to just sort of tweak to be able to become successful.
If we're thinking about how everybody can learn from this experience, thinking about how people can show more intention, be a better communicator, be more conscious of the nonverbal cues that they are putting out when they're communicating with others, regardless of whether they're hearing impaired or not, what might be areas of awareness that people could bring more focus to one at a time to allow them to be more intentional about how they communicate in a nonverbal fashion?
I think hearing or not hearing, how you communicate is so important. What you say, how you say it, right? Tonality, which is really important. Making sure that the other person understands you, I think, is the key to everything, because we misinterpret everything when it comes to text most of the time, and we shoot things off very quickly. So we have to stop. We have to slow down.
Okay.
We have to make sure that everyone understands because you know what you want to say, right? But how do I get that across to you so that you understand? And that's really important in any type of conversation, whether disability or not disability. Communication is so important, and you have to be intentional, and you have to slow down, and you have to make sure that the other party understands.
Okay. And what are some of the mistakes that you see people in business make a lot that work against that are contrary to people achieving those kind of outcomes?
A big thing is they answer too quickly. Like, it's really just like this. Everyone wants everything in life now 10 seconds ago, instead of slowing down and really reading what the person wrote and not you interpreting what they wrote. Maybe it's emotion. Maybe you're in a bad mood that day, right? And you're reading it and you're, what is this person saying, right? The communication is so important. So I think it's slow down, speak really well, articulate your words when it's in a conversation. Make sure that you slow down and think about what do I want to say to you, right? So rehearsing it a little bit, or thinking, okay, are all the facts in front of me so that you can make the best decision if I'm giving you information, especially in real estate with clients. I want to give you as much information for you so that you can make a decision.
When you were in the situation of struggling to communicate and really wrestling with being able to re-engage with the world as you navigated this, what were things that people did that made it harder for you? What were actions that people were taking that made it difficult for you to communicate?
Well, it was funny. Well, in the beginning, I was still speaking properly, because as I went on, my voice changed, but that took a little bit of a while. So if you were just speaking to me, you didn't think I was deaf. So they would start fasting. Like, they'd start slow and then speed up again, right? Or they'd turn around, or they weren't really slowing down to be able to make sure that I understood them. Happened a lot in the beginning. I lost a few clients because they didn't want to deal with me, but for the most part, I would say it was about 90% was fine. I hired an assistant, which was really important because I felt like I wanted someone who was hearing around me, because not everyone was going to be able to be into my world, right? Because I was in the hearing world. I felt like I needed to be in your world, not vice versa. So I wanted to make sure that you were protected as my client, or if it was a real estate agent, right? Whatever it was, I wanted to make sure that you were almost more comfortable than I was. So I just surrounded myself with technology, my assistant, and it just worked out that way.
You talked about the importance of listening and not just listening, but truly listening and seeking to understand.
Yes.
How can people do a better job of showing somebody that they are truly listening to them?
I think it's verbal, not nonverbal, really. It's just looking at them. Make sure that you're like what you're doing now, right? You're looking at me. You're not turning your face. You're not looking at something else. You're really, truly listening. And I think that's a really big problem right now. No one really, truly listens. The difference between hearing and listening. So actually just slowing down, I think, is so important in any conversation and giving that person attention, because I think because we want everything so quickly that we just kind of, we're not listening and we keep on going. I think it's really important.
Okay. And how else? How else can somebody really show somebody they're listening and caring? You're talking about eye contact here, talking about being
I think it's
present.
also like repeating things. So let me make sure that I understand you, right? And actually repeat what is yes. So you want to summarize for understanding. You want to make sure that you're paying attention. You want to make sure that you're repeating. And it's just sort of the almost even the sense, like we're facing each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't turn your body away. I think it's a part of that whole thing that really helps.
And what are the bad habits that you would see people do that are the opposite of that? What are the tells that perhaps you're not listening at the level that you could be?
Because you can tell by the answers. Because when you're in a conversation and when they're not truly listening, you can tell by the answer is either like a low grade answer, right? Or it's not fully explaining what you want them to understand, or they're not going into detail, which is a big thing. And I think the most part of it is that exchange of conversation where you can tell someone's not listening because they maybe won't answer you, or they go into something other direction, or they maybe don't want to answer it, or maybe they don't know how to answer it, right? So I think that's part of it that I feel like that happens, if that makes sense.
I think so. I think what you're saying is that you have a feeling of some degree of nonchalance, is that people are kind of there.
Yes.
And their answers are 60% answers, not 100% answers,
right.
Or that they are somewhat distracted by, even like, where's the phone?
Where's the phone?
Or what is it that I have happening over here that's partly important?
Right. And I think the big thing is people aren't putting their phones down or turning them over, right? So that you're present with me. And that's really important in a conversation, especially in business, right? I need your full attention. If it's real estate, right? I'm like, you're like this.
Because like, even if this thing is somewhat in shot,
it's
right?
Distracting.
It's like, and even if I do this, what I'm saying
you're not listening
is,
to me. Right.
There might be something here that is more important than this at this period of time. So it's not even like turned over. It's out of shot.
Right.
It's like completely non-present.
Right. And I think when it comes to really important conversation, we need to put the phone away or turn it over and not touch it. Because I think that's the big problem. And it's getting to a point where it's disrespectful to the other person. And it's even hard with me, I know, because you have so much going on and we want to look at it, but we're not really there. We're not present. And if it's a negotiation with a client and you're trying to multitask being on your phone, you can't do it. You have to put the phone away. And I think as good as technology is, right, in one way, it really is bad because those conversations are not happening on the level that they need to happen.
When you were in situations that you were still trying to do business but having to relearn how to communicate, were you nervous?
I was frustrated. I was really frustrated. I was nervous that the other person would think I was less than, and that was a big thing. And I think that's why I wanted to have a hearing person around me so that they wouldn't think less of me. Because even though I had all my knowledge, it's still all here. But losing hearing, right, is a big thing. And now that other person might look at me and think, well, she can't handle this job. And that was my biggest fear. And I thought, well, will I ever make money again? And that put me into fear mode, but overdrive. Because I worked so much harder because I'm like, I need to make money.
What happened to move you through being nervous to then getting to a point of feeling confident and strong again as a communicator? So
the first day that the hearing aid didn't work, because in the morning you'd put it on and it would go boop, boop, boop. You're like, okay. And I would wake up and put it in and it was nothing. And I just cried. I gave myself that day. I said, okay, today I will feel sorry for myself, but tomorrow I won't. And I just figured it out. Like, how am I going to do this? how am I going to drive, right? How am I going to communicate? How am I going to text, right? Because that had to change, right? Because I could do a lot of quick things, which is fine in business, but now I needed to write texts that were longer and much better than before was in terms of communication so that my clients could understand, right? Talking to my assistants, getting on Zoom, right? Zoom was great, right? Because now we can talk face to face. I can read, and sometimes they would forget that I was reading. They would know, right? Because I can still look at you and read at the same time. So I figured that out to do it. Like I would put a little bubble above your head, and then you would never know. And that would be good and bad because some people would forget, right? That I couldn't hear because it didn't seem like I was deaf, but all of that kind of together, I didn't want to let it get me down, and I didn't.
How did others help you work through that confidence?
Yeah. So my family was a really big part of it because they helped me with trying to figure everything out, like finding the right doctors, right? The right technology, and my friends who were very, very supportive, and the clients that I had. Right? Because it was so great to be able to continue and sell and not have to worry about it. And it just made everything just better.
What would you say to others that are maybe lacking confidence in conversation or feel like they have some form of insecurity that's preventing them from being able to be confident in business environments? What advice would you give to those people?
I think first you have to search and find solutions, figure out how you're going to do business. Like, I think that's the first part of it. Forget about the disability, forget that you don't know how to do something, figure it out, and then find people that are going to help you. Because that was a tough part too, like finding the technology or finding people or services or any of that. Took a lot of research. It was not easy, but don't give up. I think that that's what you have to figure out. Write down your goals. What is it that you want to do? How you want to work? And then figure out like the missing puzzle pieces to bring it all together so that you are successful and nothing can stop you.
So it's finding the tools that can help you, turning some of those adversaries into allies, not viewing them as a problem, just a situation that you can in turn then go on to be able to overcome.
Yeah.
From a hearing impairment point of view, is how many people out there in the working world are suffering from some degree of a hearing concern?
Yeah. Well, I really don't know the stats, but I can tell you that I'm in situations now where people can't hear and I can hear, which is amazing, right? And I'm like, okay, because I think they're ashamed, right? So they go through life without a hearing aid. And I know when I got my hearing aid, I was so happy that I could hear again, right? So I think there are just so many people out there that really need help, and thousands, I don't know the stats, but that could use our help.
Well, the stats are out there and many are conflicting, which is why I'm not going to put real data into the interview. But what I will say is there are as many, if not more, people that suffer with a hearing impairment than do with a sight challenge.
Yes.
And what I've seen in business a lot is you're at a restaurant and people are struggling to be able to read a menu, or you're in a board meeting and minutes are being shared and individuals are like, hey, can you read that again? Or what time is that again? And there are difficulties in communication that happen. What are telltale signs that somebody might be struggling with sight or hearing in a business context that you might want to try to look for?
Yeah. So a lot of it is sort of like leaning forward. Like, because when people can't hear or they can't see, they're leaning forward because they're struggling. So you can see it in body language this way, and you can see it in the face because they'll like look and like, so if you can't see, they're squinting, right? If they can't hear, and it's usually the ear, let's say they're turning so that you'll know that there's something going on because that they need to hear. I think that's a big part of it in terms of like but you have to look at people. And I think that's also a part in business that we don't actually look at who's in front of us and what they may need. And then we can switch things around, like to be able to use a larger font or if someone can't see, or if it's hearing, making it louder or having closed caption. And I know it's great because I've had agents really like reach out to me and say, hey, I'm working with an older adult and they are hearing impaired. Like, what can I do to make them feel more comfortable, but also get that communication across? So it was so great to have that because they ask the questions, right? You want to ask someone if they maybe have an impairment.
What difference did it have on mental load and just energy levels for you when people were helpful versus people standing in your way?
I'm so glad you brought that up because at the end of the day, for me, I know I'm exhausted because I'm trying to hear all day. So, and I think also if someone's struggling with communication, they're nervous, right? So it's going to be a much harder conversation or meeting or if they're out because it's not like someone who can just enjoy every conversation and look around and I need to look at you if we're in a conversation. I can't turn away from you, right? Because then I won't hear you.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, it's almost like this relief of, okay, I don't have to hear anymore. It's a weird thing, but it's very stressful. So if someone can't see, it's stressful. If they can't hear, if they can, I have a friend who's an agent who has a stutter, right? So when she wants to get through a conversation, she speaks too fast instead of slowing down and realizing it's okay, right? You need to slow down for yourself. Don't worry about the other person. I don't feel, so that kind of thing.
So what I'm hearing here, particularly from a nonverbal point of view, if you want to be a better communicator, it's less about knowing exactly what to say. It's as much about being a great partner in a conversation. It's about how do you make it easier for somebody else to be able to share their message to you? What can you do to be a companion in a conversation?
Correct.
As opposed to trying to read scientific clues of trying to judge how somebody's being is.
You have to be aware. You have to be aware about what that person is doing. So if we're in a conversation and I know that you're leaning or you're moving or you're squinting, I have to be like, okay, let me stop. And what do you need from me? Right? Because then you're going to relax. That conversation will be better. The meetings will be better instead of not looking and thinking about just about yourself and not about the other person. And that's a really big thing.
So you've shared with us today your experience from a hearing impairment point of view. And I think we've also explored that there's a reality that somewhere like the majority of people on the planet have some degree of impairment that makes it more difficult for them to communicate. Could be eyesight, could be hearing, could be ADD, could be ADHD, could be distractions, could be an obsession towards something that is helping steal their attention into other given areas.
Yeah.
But regardless of what those circumstances are, if you want to be a better communicator, be a better listener.
Yes.
And what you've shared is that some of the ways that we can listen better is be present, listen with our eyes, show body language that says that we're engaged, avoid the distractions, look to find ways to be able to accept that other people's challenges are not necessarily a problem. They're something to be aware of.
Right.
And that if we get this right, then what we can do is that we can win more than our fair share of business because we are bringing the energy gap that is actually allowing it to feel like some degree of relief for people that are navigating with challenges. Is that really what we're summarizing here?
Yeah, we're kinder humans, right? And really being able to make that other person feel comfortable is so important, more than yourself, because the outcome is going to be better. Right? If I'm really listening and I'm worried maybe about you, right? I just feel like the whole essence of it is better. Right? And then just being just about me or the content that we're going to go over. So as a real estate agent, maybe it's the listing agreement, right? So I have to make sure that listing agreement, you understand that. And what if you have, let's say you can't see that well, right? And the print is this big, so it is small, right? Or if you can't hear properly, or if you don't understand, it's my job to make you comfortable. And then make that process just so much easier.
And what I'm hearing here is, in reality, everybody's blind to your vision. Everybody's deaf to your point of view, right? Everybody is somewhat dealing with a challenge to be able to understand your point of view.
Yes.
If you can work harder to make it easier for other people to communicate with you, then they're likely to be able to reciprocate and be more open to your point of view.
100%.
Hey, Laurie, this has been a ton of fun. I can talk to you for more and more and more on this. I'm excited to share this not only with much of the hearing care community that we get the ability to serve, but also to the world at large, helping them think about how to be a better communicator to people who do not communicate as easily. What might be one last piece of advice, final thought that you have that could allow people to be able to have a greater awareness to how nonverbal impacts people's ability to engage in verbal communication?
I think it's two things. One, if you have any sort of impairment, just figure it out. I think it's a really big thing. Don't suffer in silence. Get people to help you figure it out and stay successful. And the other part really is just listen with intent. Put down the technology, listen to someone, look in their eyes, and really figure out what's going on so that you'll have better communication.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil.